Good morning, everybody. This is Grant from State of the Spark, and we are here for a lovely Monday show. We're going to get your week started off right. We're going to be talking a little bit about radical realism, why you need it, and what the threats are to your own living and how you're impacting others if you are not paying attention to what is reality. We're going to be talking about the role of realism as it pertains to, let me make sure my microphone's on. We're going to be talking about the role of realism as it pertains to navigating life and doing normal things, but we're also going to talk about its relationship to pessimism. So before we do that, we're going to be covering other news, billions for being outside, TradFi markets, and of course, the lunar eclipse siesta and what that even means. But before we do anything, you know what time it is. Morning cup of gratitude. Bust out your morning cup of gratitude. Let me know what you are grateful for today, what's getting you out of bed, what's getting you excited. And I'm going to start off with my own morning cup of gratitude. I am massively grateful. Hang on, let me check my microphone here. Hang on. Boom. And we're back. Sorry about that. I had to make sure that my microphone was on and working. There it is. So what I'm grateful for this morning is I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for my team. The SparkSites team has just added a new member, at least on a trial period. Jessica Ojeda, who's been a fan of the show. She's been on the show, and she'll actually probably be on for our SEO office hours coming up on Wednesday. But I'm super grateful for our team. I'm super grateful for the learning journey we've been on, and I'm super grateful for my fitness journey. It's been super great. So that's what I'm grateful for. What are you grateful for? What's getting you out of bed? What gets you excited? I'm grateful for my reading. I'm reading great stuff right now. I'm grateful for the people around me. I'm upgrading the team and the people I run with and the peers that I look up to. I'm grateful for the learnings, and I'm grateful for the lesson I'm going to bring you today because this thing has been unfolding in my life. If you can't start the day with gratitude, how can you even get out of bed? I don't know, but today I'm grateful. What are you grateful for today? Share it in the comments below, and let's talk about other news. Lunar eclipse siesta. Yes, tomorrow, Tuesday, November, whatever date that is, November 8th, will be the last lunar eclipse for 3 years. Now, if you looked outside this morning before the moon set, we have sunsets, we have sunrises, we have moonrises and moonsets. This morning, we had a beautiful moon set. It almost looked like a supermoon, but not exactly. But it looks full and robust tomorrow. That will be eclipsed for about an hour and a half between the hours of 5:16 a.m. and 6:41 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you're on the East Coast or wherever, if you're not on the East Coast, adjust your time accordingly. But this is the moment that the Earth passes directly between the moon and the sun. And so tomorrow morning, Eastern Standard Time at 5:16 a.m., I will be poking my head outside for an hour and a half. You can witness the last lunar eclipse for 3 years. If you want to see more about how to actually catch this in your own time zone, let me drop this comment, boom, or drop this link in the comments. There you go. Post it on Twitch, Facebook, YouTube. You can check out more about the lunar eclipse there. Let's talk about the markets real quick. I share the markets for one main reason alone. And if you're just now catching the show, you got to hear this. If you caught the show before, you know why we do this. I try to do this to inoculate you against the ups and the downs of the market. Quite often, our minds are manipulated and pushed around, or we allow ourselves to get sucked into the hype of what's going on because we hear that the markets are crazy up or the markets are crazy down. I'm here to report the TradFi and the DeFi markets because I want to demystify some of it. I want to inoculate you against those ups and downs. But also, it's a great point of reference for today's lesson, which is a radical view at reality. So let's look real quick. The Dow is up only 0.49%. It's at 32,500, and last week it was at 32,700. That means it might have crazy gone up or might have crazy gone down. And the Federal Reserve released its new numbers. And what happened to the market? It went up, it tanked, it's all over the place. Well, no, it's only 200 points difference on 32,587. And last week it was 32,770. Only 200 points. So it's only up 0.49%. The S&P is only up 0.53% at 3,799. That's only 100 points difference from last week, 3,893. The NASDAQ is up 0.58%. Not that crazy at 10,953. And last week it was at 11,500. Listen, I share this with you because you get sucked into the hype. We all get sucked into the hype. Did I miss my opportunity? Did I miss my window? No, you need to be in the markets in your own way, not financial advice. But when you see that we're about break even from where we were last Monday and all the hype, there was a ton of news last week, all the layoffs. Is depression coming? Is recession coming? In my opinion, it is. I'm preparing. It's not financial advice, but not that bad. It's about the same as it was last week. Let's talk about the DeFi markets. A lot of people say that Bitcoin, Ethereum, and some of the major cryptocurrencies do not move with the market, but I'm starting to believe that as more institutional money is involved, again, my own opinion here, they start to move similarly. For example, Bitcoin last week, when I reported, was up 7%. This week, it's only 0.02% different from last week. This week, it's 20,764. Last week, it was 20,799. Yes, it did rally almost to 23,000 throughout the week, but it's about at the same point. Did you miss your window if it rallied? Are you going to miss your window if it crashes? We're going to report as often as possible, and I'll let you know when I make my own trades, or if you're part of our Patreon, or if you're a subscriber, you will get notified when I do trades. And it's been very quiet right now because we're waiting for a breakout. It's not breaking out just yet. Ethereum up 0.2%. At 1,580, last week is at 1,624. It's only 30 points different from last week. Not much at all. Cardano ADA is break even at 0.4 cents or 40 cents. I'm sorry, 40 cents. And last week it was at 41 cents. No big moves there. XRP 0.20%, where it's at 47 cents. Last week was at 46 cents. So you can see that there's a lot of hype about these things going up and down. But we're here to report these in a rational way. So you have a radical view of reality, of what's really going on. Now, again, if you want more frequent updates from us, check out the Patreon down below. Check out our Discord down below. Get involved that way, and you'll get more real-time updates from us, I hope. But let's talk about billions for being outside. $1.5 billion. Yes, the Department of Interior has passed the Great American Outdoors Act. And the Great American Outdoors Act has allocated $1.5 billion for state and local outdoor recreational activities, wildlife, and habitat conservation efforts. Now, this is huge because it is locally led. And when we say locally led, some of the strongest local groups for wildlife and habitat preservation, as well as state and local outdoor activities, are generally indigenous groups. Indigenous groups are constantly trying to ensure that they're doing wildlife and habitat preservation. So some of this money will finally end up in their hands. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and Marissa will correct me later if I am wrong, the Department of Interior, the Secretary of the Interior, is an indigenous woman. And this has been great for indigenous rights and indigenous awareness. And I personally have a huge veneration or respect for the paradigm that has still stuck with a lot of indigenous tribes and indigenous communities and groups, as it affects our natural resources and how they view stewarding our natural resources. So even though I'm not big on printing money and adding more to our inflation, I am big saying, hey, if we're going to print money anyway, this is something that I would like to see money go to. So the Great American Outdoors Act, if you want to read more about what's going on with that, let me give you this link right here. This will largely go to keeping state parks and local parks updated. This will not actually be led by the federal government. This isn't for federal parks or national parks. This money is going to the state of Florida, the state of Texas, the state of Colorado, or wherever state you're at, and they will be upgrading their parks. Now, when you think about it, $1.5 billion through 50 some odd states preserving state parks and local parks, it's actually not a lot of money. It's going to go pretty quickly. But my hope is that it actually ends up in hopefully purchasing large land tracts that get preserved, and habitat and wildlife corridors can be either expanded or at least preserved from shrinking, which would be huge. So you can read about that in that link right there. And why these two stories? Why do I talk about science on the moon and lunar and astronomy? Why do we talk about planets and space? And why do we talk about nature? Well, this news and other news like it, and the entire other news section, is to ground you in reality. And the idea is this. At Spark, we're here to ignite lives of explosive significance. We're here to help you take the next level. That's what we do. And usually that manifests in pursuing freedom. Freedom from your job, freedom from your mindset, freedom from bad relationships. But if you caught that, our mindsets are often the thing that are binding us more than anything. And as a personal development coach and a small business coach, actually, I'm just in the business of revealing to someone their paradigms and comparing that to their desired outcomes and asking ourselves, do your paradigms and the paradigms you're holding on to, do they match and match the strategies necessary for you to obtain your dream? We're looking at news like this, and we always look at news like this because we need a radical self-assessment. We need to look in the mirror and see ourselves for who we are. And that's what we're talking about today with today's Radical Realism in Selling Sexuality. So one part of this is a story that happened this weekend. I was perusing my Twitter, and one of the tweets that came across my stream was a tweet from a female who was dating. And this female in her dating life asked a question of the public, and she said, "How much of a project should a boyfriend be? How fixed or complete should he be before dating him?" And of course, the comments were all over the place. But this is the one thing that struck me as me and Eli were eating breakfast at 1961, steak and eggs for breakfast yesterday. The thought that struck me is this person is trying to make a rule for living out of something that was meant to be a metaphor. When we talk about, in this example, of don't date a project, I don't need another project in a partner. What we're talking about is a metaphor of how much effort goes into actually fixing someone else's reality before you fix your own. Now, one of the commenters on this particular tweet said, "No one's ever complete. They're always a work in progress." And I agree with that. And that is true. And that is extending the metaphor. We are all a work in progress, and we're never complete. When we're complete, we're dead. We should always be growing. But the metaphor of don't date a project, don't take on a project, it was meant to be a metaphor, not a rule for living. And by that, I mean it was meant to allude to the effort it takes to build someone else's house before you build your own. Yes, you should date people, and you should date people who are aware that they're never fully complete. But they shouldn't find or depend or require completeness in you. Neither should you depend or require completeness in another person. The goal is that you're not two whole people coming together to make a better whole, or two broken half people coming together to make a single whole. The goal is two individuals who know how to navigate themselves, know how to take care of themselves, know how to communicate what they need, know how to stand for what they need, and in kindness, know how to communicate that to their partner. But together, combined, you make something unique and awesome. But it was never meant to take this metaphor of a project and turn it into a rule by which you should measure whether or not you should date someone. Now, this show is not about dating. The show, today's lesson, is about a radical view of reality. And what this person was confusing was metaphor with reality. When someone looks to take a metaphor and extrapolate a rule from that metaphor, they then cross into bridging too much of metaphor into reality. Focus should be showing up to be the person your partner needs rather than searching for a partner that meets your needs. And I would even take this further. I believe that you should not. I believe you definitely should not be searching for a person that meets your needs. I used to. And I used to live very strongly by that. I don't believe that anymore. But I would take this further and say you should also not seek to be someone your partner needs. You should be you. And you should ask each other in a radical view of reality whether or not you meet each other's needs. Am I the type of person you want to be with? No? Okay, great. I can't change. I can fake it. I can try to change. I can also know your needs and do my best to be a person in your life who meets those, as do your friends, as do your family, as do your loved ones. We should all be seeking to be kind and to serve one another with a heart of service. But the only caveat I would make to this is let's not try to become what the person needs. Let's just see if we can show up and give them a little bit of what they need. But let's not be the person they need, because that will also create a type of codependency, at least from them. But neither here nor there, boom, Good morning, Allison. This is Allison. She's used to seeing us from the Not Crypto Bros. Allison, today is the Spark Show, and I do this most Mondays where I actually check in on personal development lessons as a business coach and a personal development coach. So, good morning, Allison. Thank you so much. And Allison, to those who don't know, please check her out. Please follow Metaplex, I believe it is, where she is actively involved in the crypto universe. So, a big shout out to Allison this morning. So, the first story this morning is about whether or not you are actually viewing reality. When you take a metaphor, for example, this gal's dating metaphor of taking on a project as a partner, and actually trying to make a dating rule out of it, you're missing the point. It's a metaphor. And this pointed out to me that many people in the dating sphere are skimming their feeds, scrolling these one-liner 15-second to 30-second anecdotes from influencers that are usually speaking in metaphor, usually speaking in allegory, usually delivering axioms or quips or things to ponder. But what does the user do? Do they stop and ponder? No. They scroll to the next one and they try to absorb that one-liner as a rule, not take it for what it is, and that's quite often an anecdote or a metaphor. Let me give you another anecdote about how people mix life with reality. So recently, some of you who might be following my Instagram might have seen me post a fitness photo. I've been on a fitness journey, and it's one of the most aggressive fitness journeys I've had as an adult. I've been a CrossFit instructor. I've grown up surfing. I've been a runner. I have always paid attention to my health and fitness, but I have let myself get out of shape, or at least overweight for me. Over the last 6 months, I've been aggressive about putting my fitness and health together, starting with our trip to Tacoma, Washington, where we stayed there for 6 weeks. And I've extended that to here, and I've got a little bit longer to go. I experimented with marketing by posting a fitness photo. And when I posted that fitness photo, it was out of focus. It was not well planned. It was far off. I had no filters on it. It was a little blurry. And that one fitness photo with my shirt off got more posts, more engagement, more likes, more comments, and more DMs than all of my other social media posting for the rest of the year to date. Not all ever, but year to date. It was the most engaged. It was an out of focus photo. And I realized that sexuality sells. Now, I wasn't selling sex. I wasn't talking about sex. And sexuality isn't just sensuality. It's an earthliness. When I use this term sexuality and sensuality, there is this gritty earthliness when we look at other people's bodies, when we see them move. It's not always sexually driven. Sometimes it's just like me doing a news story, as I did above or previously, with the lunar eclipse siesta or the wildlife investment. These are things that ground you in reality. When we look at sensual posts, we believe, though it's not always accurate, we're being grounded in reality because it connects with a primal part of our brain. I noticed that as I posted this one post, the contrast struck me deeply. You see, I have been posting for over a decade, and people don't know that. This show alone has had 271 episodes since the beginning of the pandemic. I've had a decent following from this show, The Spark Show. At one point, I was doing 5 shows a week. I went down to 2 shows a week, and now I'm doing about 1 show a week because I have other shows now, the Not Crypto Show, which Allison is aware of. I also have the office hours periodically throughout the week. We try to serve different audiences. But for the longest time, I thought high intelligence, high intellectualism, compassion, kindness, virtuousness, that these things would sell, as it were, that they would gain a following, that my YouTube would expand. Let me throw this in here. When I posted on YouTube a cryptocurrency post, I gained more followers in a single week. My YouTube is up to 5,000 followers. 5,000 followers on my YouTube. Not because I posted one of these educational posts about radical realism or selling sexuality or Einstein's religion, but because I posted about cryptocurrency. It was a hot thing of the day. I parallel this to my shirt off fitness post that got more engagement than all the rest of my social media the previous year. What chapped me about this is I have maintained a moral high ground. I have maintained a moral superiority that if I stay in the world of intellectualism, if I am myself, as it were, and talked about things that matter to me, that I believe truly matter to the human species, that it would garner a following, I would gain respect. And really, behind all of that, the boons of society would come to me. hold my own, toe the line for something with integrity and something that doesn't just shill. Or as that's a term we use in cryptocurrency. When you're shilling a cryptocurrency, you're kind of just like selling no matter what. You're just selling to sell. Without doing any of that, I've held a moral high ground, and not because that's necessarily wrong. And I'm not saying that being virtuous, and I'm not saying that being authentic is wrong. What I'm saying is I had a misperception about the boons that would win me. I believed that if I ran that route, that the boons of society would come. And the sudden realization, along with this tweet, made me start to look at myself. And I'll give you one very vulnerable, for those watching at 7 a.m. in the morning, one very vulnerable story. I have maintained for a long time that my Christian friends would say I'm not Christian, and my non-Christian friends would say I'm too Christian. You see, I was raised in the non-denominational Pentecostal church, and this deeply impacted positively my life. It was also wrought with its own challenges, and I also didn't fit in, like I didn't fit in school, where I would ask intellectual questions or rational questions, and I wasn't reading the room. I'll give you an example. One day I decided that I wasn't liking how hell was being taught. So I decided to teach myself Greek, and I taught myself Greek, and I read the entire New Testament, and I realized there's no real doctrine for hell in here. And when I raised that question, and I noticed how the church reacted to that question, I started to question, well, what other things is the church not tolerant of analyzing deeply? And I went through this exploration, and very quickly I found myself not in alignment with standard Sunday church. So I went on the missionary field, holding that I'm still a Christian and I want to maintain Christianity because it does something inside of me and it gives me this massive view of the world and it benefits me in so many different ways and it gives me a community. But I got questions about theology. So I'll go to the missionary field where I can serve people and I won't get bothered with theology. And it got worse. I started reading humanitarian development books and realizing humanitarian development is flawed in so many ways. And I started analyzing, is this making a positive impact? The book Travesty in Haiti, or Rich Christians in an Age of Hunger, or Toxic Charity. These books rocked my life, and my paradigm was challenged. And so we came off the missionary field and said, we love serving people. And from then forward, I quit participating in church, but I maintained that I'm still a Christian. It's just I'm not a church-going Christian. I am a Christian that loves to serve. And for the longest time, I've used that phrase. My Christian friends would think I'm not Christian. My non-Christian friends would think I'm too Christian. And as I was going through this very analysis of analyzing radical reality, this very week, I said for the first time out loud to two friends of mine as I was taking them to the airport, I don't think I'm a Christian. And they challenged me on why. And I thought, well, I was culturally a Christian for so long. But the truth is, I don't do the things that people who truly consider themselves Christian do, and they don't consider me Christian, and my non-Christian friends do not think I'm Christian. I was not having a radical acceptance of reality. So for the first time, saying publicly, wearing this out, I'm not a Christian. I am religious, I am spiritual, and we could talk about that in a second because we're going to talk about Einstein's religion and how the world has taken Einstein's statements, these quips, these axioms, these metaphors, and they've made it a rule about one of the most intelligent people in our modern era is. Let's talk about Einstein's religion briefly, and we'll land this plane. Charles Dawkins, a prolific atheist, has taken Einstein's quotes and made it sound like Einstein is an atheist. Now, if you can tell where I'm going, a lot of my Christian friends also have taken Einstein's quote, specifically, God does not play dice with the universe, and taken that statement or that quip or that anecdote or that allegory and turned it into a rule that Einstein must be a believer in God, capital G, God. So some sort of Judeo-Christian God. He was raised Jewish. He wasn't necessarily a Jew. He wasn't a practicing Jew. He never actually claimed Christianity, but he did say God doesn't play dice with the universe, and people forget the context of that. So they take that statement, or Charles Dawkins takes other statements that Einstein has made, and both parties, both atheists, Charles Dawkins, and Christians, believers or faith-going people, have taken statements, quips, metaphors, allegories out of context. I think the best summary of Einstein's religion was summarized Oh, do I have it here? I don't have it here verbatim. Was summarized in a book that I'm reading right now, The Future of God by Deepak Chopra. Very interesting book. Some of it's good, something's bad. It's a response to Charles Dawkins' treatise on atheism. He wrote about a time that before Einstein left Germany, he was at a dinner party in Berlin, and someone had brought up astrology. And they were talking about astrology very positively, and someone at the table said, astrology is hoodoo. And they made an offhanded quip, and they said, it's hoodoo like Christianity is hoodoo. And of course, one of the people from the Reich stood up and said, wait, astrology is different. God is supreme. This is the fatherland after all. And astrology and Christianity are no different. And of course, the conversation turned to the most brilliant scientist in the room, Einstein. And they said, Einstein, what do you believe? And Einstein paused. And I'm going to paraphrase this and I'm going to butcher it. For those who know the quote literally, I'll post it later. So please give me grace. But Einstein paused and thought a little bit and summarized and said, I would be foolish to not look at the natural world and my sciences and my mathematics and not see order. But where most people see a personal God or a personal religion, I don't see that either. Insofar as we can see the mechanics of the universe and see that there is an unseen force, whether the strong or weak force of physics or whether God, I know not. But my veneration and my worship of the unseen force of the universe is my religion. And I want to key in on something. I don't know who this is this morning. Hi, bro. How are you? How are you? Whoever you are, give me your name. It's not coming through the feed for some reason, but good morning and how are you doing? Thanks for stopping by this morning. But Einstein believed he was religious. And he believed he was religious because he was in awe of the unknown. But he had a radically realistic view of the unknown. He actually said outright, I do not believe in a personal God because I don't see it in reality. I do see there is often times when a prayer lines up with the circumstances in someone's life, and it looks like a prayer was answered. He points out that there are mechanics in the universe, and though it does seem a little bit like chaos at one level, and that would point to quantum physics, he said, I do see a massive amount of order and organization and unknown intelligence, and I'm not calling it capital G God, but I am worshiping it because it's beautiful and it's designed and it's worth being in awe of. A heart of sacredness. You see, radical realism is not pessimism. Radical realism is radically saying what you see and what you experience. I would be a liar if I said I did not have unexplainable experiences when I prayed to God. I'd be a liar. I've had profound divine experiences. But I have found that holding on to the experiences which might just be an allegory or a metaphor or the easiest, most convenient way I can describe the unknown, basically lazy-mindedness. And I chose to make that my rule for living. The limitations I placed on myself or the ambitions I placed on myself. How this has trickled down, the Christianity that still manifests in me is this. If I have a morally superior or virtuous way about my life, I will get more of the boons of reality. And I'm not sure how, but if I just take it on faith, it'll happen. The prosperity gospel was at the time very helpful to me because it gave me hope. I don't know what this is. Bro, I am a thief. Please help me. I don't really know what you're talking about there. So I'm going to put you down there. So my point is there are so many corners in our life where we have not had a radical self-assessment of what we are being realistic about, of the mechanics of the universe and how it works, whether it's me posting a fitness photo and that getting more engagement than anything else, or me posting inflammatory titles like selling sexuality gets more engagement than any other post, such as, let's actually have a more realistic view of the world. No, I called it radical realism. I called it selling sexuality. I called it Einstein's religion because that's more of a hook and it gets more views. And I do want to basically give a spoonful of sugar to make the medicine go down. And so I will never back off of doing teaching because I think it's what the world needs. But let me tell you how I'm solving for this paradox where we should be virtuous people because we know in our heart of hearts it's the right thing to do. We should pursue what is the unknown. behind the scenes, whether you call that God or whether you call it quantum mechanics, whatever you think it is, you should pursue it. And more importantly, you should have a heart of sacredness, of holiness to this thing we called life, because for all we know, we only get one. I believe your religion should be radical reality. And the awe and the worship that you have should be for the daily encounters you have. So how do we solve this paradox where that's true, but we also need a radical piece of realism? And I strongly believe that this is not contradictory to optimism. So what's the course? How now shall we proceed? Number one, how do we resolve this paradox? You need to absorb this one mantra, and it parallels another quote or an anecdote, and it's this: you can truly have anything in this world, anything, but you can't have everything. I love this quote. You can have anything, but not everything. Why? There's a dose of optimism in that. You can truly have whatever you put your heart to, but you can't have everything. And that's where the physics and the reality come in. There are physics to your business. For example, it's much easier to make your current existing business far more profitable than it is to start from zero. So if you have a business you don't like, I would caution you from ditching it too quickly. I'm not saying don't ditch it. I'm not saying do ditch it. I'm saying ponder these things and don't just skim to the next headline. So I say optimism, get it in you that optimism is not the opposite of realism. Optimism and realism are not two sides of the same, or not a dichotomy. Optimism and pessimism are. Realism is how realistic you are being, not about yourself, but about the laws of physics around you and the mechanics of the world around you. Are you being realistic first and foremost? Is your foundation firm on how mechanics work? Sexuality sells. I have to accept that. So if I go the intellectual route, I have to expect that the mechanics are that I will have a lower engagement rate than my fitness rate. So why not get radically fit and not refer to my fitness, but be fit, be well put together, and then teach. And that will get me somewhere in between. Reality is not the opposite of optimism. Pessimism is the opposite of optimism. Now, we do have to be careful that you are not hiding your pessimism under the name realism. You got to parse out the two. If you're being realistic, you're not equating and assessing what the future will be like. If you're being realistic, you're assessing what reality and present day is in terms of mechanics. But if you extrapolate to the future that's positive or negative, what you're saying is you're being optimistic or pessimistic. So I say that for the first thing to solve this paradox of how do you have a radical embracing of realism and still have a moral integrity life, first and foremost, extrapolate the difference that you can have anything, just not everything. And what that means is be optimistic about the future with a dose of realism. Realism assesses things how they are and how they work. Optimism and realism together will bring you amazing results. Number two, embrace realism. And here's a painful way for you to embrace realism. Email your 5 closest friends and ask them for an unhinged review of where you are blinded by some of your moral superiority. How has my moral superiority or my virtue or what I think is better than everyone else, how has that hindered me? Be honest. And commit to them in your invite. Text them. And that invite should say, I will not respond except with thank you. And that won't mean anything other than I want to reward your raw honesty with me with a simple thank you. The second thing is change your expectations. If you are going to hold a moral high ground and a superiority of your virtue, then change the expectations of the outcome. If, for example, you want to stay religious, you have to accept that statistically, I'm not going to have as high of a response than if I started, for example, selling sexuality. I'm not going to do that. It triggers people, and now I'm going to stay on my moral high ground. Great. Adjust your expectations of the outcomes of reality. If you hold to a moral high ground or virtue, you have to adjust that you will likely not bring the boons of society in your lifetime. Will it be good for the species? Sure. Will it be good for your family? Absolutely. Will it be good for your kids? Most likely. But it simply will not produce the same level of outcome that playing to the mechanics of reality will. And that is in this example, what they call the sin industries or the sin tax. If you do alcohol, partying, sexuality, sensuality, if you sell those things, you're almost guaranteed to have a higher result. Does it mean you'll win life? No. You have to determine that's a different topic. What is success is a different topic than reality and embracing reality. So these two activities, I think, are the top two activities. Number one, embrace realism by asking your 5 closest friends for a raw response on how your morality has led to limitations, how your sense of virtue has limited or contrast what you say as your desired outcomes. Where are my paradoxes? Where are my blind sides? And then the second thing is if you want to maintain your trajectory, adjust your expectations based on how your trajectory aligns with the mechanics of the universe. If I believe I'm going to be moral, I probably and run on ethics only and run on intellectualism only. I probably won't be the billionaire that most people point to. Now, I do believe billionaires and millionaires are ethical people, largely speaking, and I know that contrasts with most people. That's a hot take. I don't believe they're all manipulators. I believe a lot of people have generational wealth behind them. I believe a lot of people are trying to do their best. They just do have a different moral compass. That doesn't mean it's a worse one. It means they're looking at humanity at a different scale. And so I do hold that. But that has often contradicted my own sense of my own moral compass and how I'm guiding things and seeing things. And I'm trying to rectify that today. So these two things: embrace realism, ask your 5 closest friends where you're blinded by your moral code. And number 2, adjust your expectations if you're going to hold to your moral code, which I believe you should. I believe you should hold to your moral code. I believe you should hold to a moral compass. I just believe you should adjust your expectations of what the world will give you for that. Will it have a positive impact? Sure, over time. Will God help me? Maybe. Maybe. There have been times where God helped me, or I'd like to ascribe God help, or an unknown force came to my aid completely. But frequent enough for me to call that a law like gravity? No, not at all. Have a radical view of realism. Now, no matter what you do today, I think your base should be optimism. I believe your base goal should be big. So why are we talking about this today? Because our goal is big, and that's igniting lives of explosive significance. And I pray today you start with your own. Have a great day. Have a radically real and optimistic day.